Good afternoon, folks. I'm Loki. Today we're going to talk about privilege. I would just like to preface this with a trigger warning. I don't know why, just in case it might offend someone, upset someone, force someone to think a thought they weren't thinking before I forced them to think it. All these things that we need protection from. So I'm prefacing this with a trigger warning just in case. However, if you do feel offended, or you do feel upset, or you feel triggered in some emotional sense, what I would urge you to do is be with your emotion. Process your emotion, understand yourself a little more. What you absolutely mustn't do is attempt to reorder the world and everyone in it around your emotional limitations. There is no science or evidence that says being protected from painful, harmful, frightening memories or ideas is in any way conducive to recovering from the psychological, physical stress that a traumatic situation placed on us. And in that open and genuine spirit of intellectual inquiry, I'm going to talk to you about privilege theory as quickly as I can. Privilege theory is an attempt to articulate the various differences we experience in society as individuals. If you imagine someone who uses a wheelchair to get around. So when you get up in the morning, if you're like me, then you just get up, you go to the toilet, you walk into the kitchen, you make a cup of tea, you get dressed. You go down the stairs, you get on your bike, you go on a bus, you get in a car and you go to work. And that's your life. You're not necessarily conscious or thinking about the person who uses the wheelchair. So even just the act of getting up out of their bed and going to the toilet is completely different for them than it is for you. Privilege is an honest and virtuous attempt to articulate that deficit in our experience and create a space for the struggle of the person that we're not always conscious of because we're caught up in our own life to exist. So at its core, we see that it's a useful theory. I remember the first time that I heard the theory explained. It helped me articulate my personal experience. I found it immensely comforting, and it also helped me develop a language and a lexicon and a confidence to discuss these ideas about my identity with other like-minded people. I'm going to use top trumps cards as a way of trying to demonstrate in a more literal term what privilege theory says. So it says the white man is the most privileged form of person in this society, and that in all instances, no matter what other person they come up against, the white heterosexual male exercises privilege at all times because they are the dominant person in the society. I don't think anybody would argue with that on sort of theoretical terms, culturally, especially in the context of history. However, while it's assumed that by some who discuss the theory that all men are like this, in truth, most men are like this, kind of average, no one's heard of them, they don't have a very unique or original origin story. And so naturally, people who feel confident to discuss theories around identity politics online or in opinion columns or generally in the sort of narrow privileged cultural sphere, it could be said that they are privileged as well. And so where you will find a lot of animosity is online, where people take their theories and try to superimpose them onto other people. So while privilege theory was designed for marginalised folk like the elderly, people of colour and immigrants, people with disabilities and additional needs, children, people with mental illnesses. Essentially, the conversation about privilege is a privileged conversation in which privileged people discuss the concept of inclusivity exclusively. And they argue about the various methods in which they should check other people's privilege or not check other people's privilege. So, basically, it's a bunch of people like that talking on behalf of all of these people and claiming that that is a virtue. And that is where the problem lies with the theory. in my opinion. And so, when you don't go beyond that initial stage of learning the language to describe how you feel, talking to like-minded people, when you don't go further than that and have those ideas challenged from the outside, then you begin to feel like the theory is real. You forget it's privilege theory. And so when people disagree with it, you've already attached strongly to this idea that the theory is a product of a moral force in society, a moral continuum on which you are on. So anyone who disagrees is disagreeing with morality. Anyone who disagrees is ethically ambiguous and debatable. Now that creates an emotional disturbance in people, because on the other side people want to challenge that idea and they feel that it's been subtly implied that they are complicit in some structural form of abuse or oppression. The person on this side who wields privilege theory and very much believes that it's real and true can't understand why anyone would disagree with a system of thought that is about empowering people and equality and inclusivity. But just because you think it's about empowering people and just because you think it's moral, does that mean it is? So at what point can an ideology run into trouble? I'm interested to know, what did people think of the concept of privilege? Was it useful the way that I described it? Is it helpful to slice society along arbitrary factors out with people's control and assume either villainy or virtue based on someone's gender, based on someone's point of origin, race, and so on and so forth? Or is it a wee bit more of a complex picture? And do we have to accept that while the theory around privilege is helpful in articulating the experience of some, it doesn't necessarily work well when superimposed onto people who either don't know about it, don't understand it, or actually completely 100% disagree with it? I'm interested to know what you think. Is it a helpful idea? What are the problems with it? What is your experience of it? And are you someone in society that would deem themselves to be privileged, or are you someone in society that seems to be on the receiving end of someone else's? Just leave your comments in the section below. Trigger warning.